Hello, my name is Ace Baker. I write and produce music for film and television, and I'm also an expert in visual effects, and we're here in my studio in Southern California. I've been researching the events of 9/11 for the past 4 years. The horrific events of 9/11 burned a deep scar in the public conscience. Who can forget the day 19 suicidal Muslim terrorists hijacked planes and deliberately crashed them into the Twin Towers and the Pentagon? Who can forget when the Twin Towers collapsed under their own weight, overwhelmed by the intense jet fuel fires? Who can forget the outrage we all felt that day, knowing that 3,000 innocent people had been murdered in such a diabolic way? And all for what? All because a backward band of religious extremists were determined to destroy Western civilization? Is this story true? What on earth happened? The phenomena that we see on 9/11 are so powerful and so strange, it defies explanation. It will boggle your mind. I want to take you on my journey of discovery. I think you'll find it very interesting, but I warn you now. What you will see and learn may be disturbing and may upset and challenge your view of your government, your news media, and your world. But I ask you to watch because I believe that getting to the truth of what happened on 9/11 is the most important issue of our time. Let's begin by revisiting 9/11 the way most of us experienced it in the first place, through the lens of television news.
That the average life expectancy, as we know, for a cat or a dog is between 10 and 15 years, but that there's a new scientific breakthrough which could give your pet a longer life. And Dr. Carol Hurley, a veterinarian with the Waltham Center for Pet Nutrition in England, has developed what they're calling a kind of...
Absolutely the most amazing man that America has ever created, ever.
Okay, I have got to interrupt you right now.
Sorry.
Richard Hack, thank you very much. We appreciate the book is called Hughes. We want to go live right now and show you a picture of the World Trade Center, where I understand, do we have it? No, we do not. We have a breaking story, though. We're going to come back with that in just a moment.
I want to tell you what we know as we know it. We just got a report in that there's been some sort of explosion at the World Trade Center in New York City. One report said, and we can't confirm any of this, that a plane may have hit one of the two towers of the World Trade Center. But again, you're seeing the live pictures here.
As we come on air, we have serious news of a major possible air crash in the United States. A plane appears to have crashed into one of New York's tallest buildings, the World Trade Center.
There is one report, as of yet unconfirmed, that a plane has hit the World Trade Center, and you can see that there is smoke there coming out.
It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. We have, I understand, an eyewitness on the phone right now.
It seemed to be like a small plane. I just heard a couple noises. It looked like it bounced off the building, and then I just saw a huge ball of fire on top.
Of Manhattan. We're trying to get people on the telephone to see what more we can learn. We have no idea if it was a plane. Was it in any sense deliberate? Was it an accident?
We don't know yet whether this was an accident, some sort of planned incident. We just want to show you this picture here, and we are trying to get some information.
It did seem to you that it was done on purpose?
Sparks and fire, and now it looks almost like a mild explosion.
Unfortunately, one of the worst fears that might have happened has come to pass. One of those towers, 110 stories, has apparently collapsed.
The entire building has just collapsed, as if a demolition team set off. When you see those demolitions of the old buildings, it folded down on itself and it is not there anymore.
Good Lord.
Steel method. That looked like a second plane.
Losing just in fact, no, the steel.
They were actually war.
Terrorist Osama bin Laden.
There's no evidence of a plane having
This is an act of war.
They were actually war to end all wars.
That's the story we were told. 19 kamikaze Muslim hijackers hated our freedom so much that they took over 4 commercial airliners. They flew them around the northeastern United States. They crashed one into each twin tower. And one into the Pentagon.
smoke rising up out of what looked like a small pit.
One went down in a Pennsylvania field after a struggle with heroic passengers. Super hot fires raged inside the towers, melting the steel supports, eventually causing them to collapse under their own weight.
Almost like a mushroom cloud explosion. And I'll tell you that I can't see that second cloud.
And all of it was masterminded by a guy hiding in a cave in Afghanistan. The events of 9/11 were bizarre and unprecedented. Yet the government wasted no time telling us what happened,
the heat was so intense that the steel melted,
who did it,
Reputed Arab terrorist Osama bin Laden,
and what our response was going to be.
They were acts of war.
Before and since 9/11, no steel-framed skyscrapers have ever completely collapsed from fire. On September 13th, just 48 hours after the event, Northwestern University structural engineer Zdeněk Bezant published his simple analysis. Simple. Bezant imagined the upper block of the tower powering down through the entire undamaged lower part of the tower in what became nicknamed the pile driver theory. That same day, September 13th, 2001, structural engineer Chris Wise also made it simple. He informed us that the fire reached 800 degrees Celsius, which melted the steel supports. The Twin Towers were among the largest and strongest structures ever built. They were a tube within a tube, 240 steel box columns around the perimeter, and a central core structure of 47 massive and cross-braced steel columns. Could plane crashes and fires really cause what we saw?
It was the heat. The flames there burned too long and too hot, rising about 1,500 degrees. It began to melt the steel.
The American people were in shock. Most accepted the simple explanations unquestioningly, but not everyone. On September 11th, explosives expert Van Romero said he thought explosives were planted in the towers. Curiously, a week later, Romero flip-flopped and said that fire did it. But could fire really do this?
It's hard to put it into words.
To some people, it looked an awful lot like a mushroom cloud. On October 21st, 2001, Jay McMichael posted, "Muslims suspend the laws of physics." I tried to be patriotic. I tried to believe, he says. McMichael points out that a jet fuel fire cannot possibly melt steel. A few weeks later, speaking at the UN, President Bush called for intolerance.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th, malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
Nevertheless, videos and websites claiming a 9/11 government conspiracy began to flourish. There were questions, painful questions, about the missing air defenses, demolitions, Building 7, multiple war games, and the airplane passenger lists. A few days after 9/11, CNN published the passenger lists from all 4 of the hijacked flights. No names of any of the 19 hijackers were on there. Larry Silverstein took out a 99-year lease on the Twin Towers just 6 weeks before 9/11, after it had been owned by the Port Authority for over 30 years. Speaking about Building 7 in a PBS documentary, Silverstein said,
I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
A put option is a financial instrument that goes up in value when the stock value goes down. Just a few days before 9/11, the volume of put options placed on United and American Airlines spiked to more than 30 times normal. And where was America's mighty air defense? When any commercial aircraft is off course or does not respond to air traffic control, it is standard procedure to intercept with scrambled Air Force fighter jets. F-16s can be airborne in 2 minutes. The 9/11 planes were flying all over the Northeast for an hour and a half. Was it just a coincidence that a number of military war games were taking place on 9/11, including simulated hijackings, planes crashing into buildings, and fake blips injected into radar screens? NORAD and the FAA were confused. Was it just a coincidence that a bioterror exercise called Tripod 2 was scheduled for the day after 9/11 on the pier right next to the World Trade Center, and that FEMA agents had already arrived the night before 9/11?
To be honest with you, we arrived on late Monday night and went into action on Tuesday morning.
Was it just a coincidence that on the day before 9/11, the Pentagon announced that it had misplaced
$2.3 trillion.
Was it just a coincidence that Flight 77 struck the Pentagon in an area that had recently had the outer walls renovated and that contained financial records, and not in the area where the top brass had their offices? Flight 77 allegedly made a death-defying spiral dive maneuver, then flew in at ground level, knocking over multiple light poles, yet somehow pilot Hani Hanjour maintained control despite the fact that he couldn't even fly a Cessna, and managed to destroy the aircraft so completely that not a single serial number part was ever recovered? Where are the engines? Where are the seats? Where's the luggage? Where are the passengers? Popular Mechanics magazine published an article and later a book promoting the official story.
Conspiracy theorists want to know why it wasn't the width of the full wingspan of the plane, and actually just the simple reason was that the wings came off.
I think what they expect is that if an airplane hits a building, it kind of punches a cartoon-like hole in the building in the exact shape of the wings. The wings did not fully penetrate the facade. In fact, the wings had already been partially sheared off by the time the plane even hit the building.
Perhaps people expected a cartoon cutout at the Pentagon because earlier they'd been shown cartoon cutouts at the Twin Towers. And what about World Trade Center Building 7? A 47-story skyscraper that dropped straight down into its footprint at 5:20 p.m. on 9/11. It certainly wasn't hit by any airplane. And why was most of the steel from Ground Zero hurriedly shipped off to China before it could be studied?
We were able to move 120 dump trucks out of the city last night, which will give you a sense of the work that was done overnight.
Shit! Oh, shit!
A number of early researchers noticed the sheer speed of the tower destruction. An object dropped from the top of the towers would take 9.2 seconds to freefall to the ground, ignoring air resistance. With air resistance, freefall time could go above 12 seconds. Measuring the downward acceleration of Building 7, it is shown that the mass literally went into freefall, meaning the structure offered no resistance whatsoever. This is irrefutable proof of controlled demolition.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word.
The 9/11 Blimp website offered this graphic, asking which would hit the ground first. The top part of any skyscraper is the lightest and weakest part. They get progressively stronger and more massive as they go down. A growing number of people could not believe this was a gravity-driven collapse. In May 2002, FEMA released the first official government study on 9/11. The findings were packaged for mass media in the PBS Nova program, Why the Towers Fell.
As the steel began to soften and melt, the interior core columns began to give. Then you had this sequential failure that took place where it all pancaked one after the other.
If the floors pancaked, wouldn't the core structures be left standing? Quarter-mile-high monoliths of steel and concrete allegedly collapsed and fell down into a pile. This is what was actually left of the Twin Towers. Aman Zafar took this series of still photos from across the Hudson River. The building appears to systematically disintegrate into an expanding cloud of dust, a dust tsunami. Posting on his site 9/11 Research, mathematician and software engineer Jim Hoffman studied the expansion of the dust cloud. He discovered this phenomenon required at least 10 times more energy than would be available from the falling mass of the tower.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God, I told you!
That's not even counting the energy needed to break the building apart and create all the dust.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Only powerful explosives could explain the presence of so much energy. Public pressure forced a new government investigation. The 9/11 Commission issued its report in August 2004, but they ignored all of the troubling questions raised by the Truth Movement. Instead, they assumed the official story about the 19 hijackers and framed public debate around intelligence failures. Did the Bush administration receive warnings that Al-Qaeda was going to strike? How specific were the threats? How can security be strengthened in the future? The 9/11 Commission did offer one casual little footnote about the frailty of the Twin Towers. Does this look like a hollow steel shaft? The 9/11 Commission did not even mention Building 7. But we did get some very interesting testimony from Transportation Secretary Norman Mineta.
During the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon, there was a young man who would come in and say to the Vice President, the plane is 50 miles out. The plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the Vice President, do the orders still stand? And the Vice President turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary?
What were those orders? To shoot the plane down or to not shoot it down? In 2005, Jim Fetzer, Professor Emeritus from the University of Minnesota and noted JFK assassination researcher, teamed up with BYU nuclear physicist Stephen Jones to create the Scholars for 9/11 Truth. The academic affiliations were adding much-needed visibility to the 9/11 Truth movement. Fetzer scored 3 appearances on Fox News.
Joining us now, the co-chairman of Scholars for 9/11 Truth, Professor Emeritus at the University of Minnesota at Duluth, James Fetzer.
No, you're confused, and I hope that Fox usually does a better job on their research than this.
All right, so
but I created an organization of faculty and scholars to study 9/11.
All right, I want to be clear on this.
We discovered that practically everything the government has told us about it is false.
Yeah, I want to get into
including physicists, mechanical engineers, pilots, aeronautical engineers.
Sure.
We've discovered that the Twin Towers were brought down by controlled demolition.
Do the orders still stand?
The order had to be to not shoot down the plane that was approaching the Pentagon. After all, the order should have been to shoot it down. Shooting it down would be the obvious thing to do when you consider that you're going to lose the passengers in the plane if you shoot it down, but if you don't, you're going to use the passengers in the plane and also, of course, all the personnel and property at the target.
I think the very kindest thing that we can say about George W. Bush and all the people in the U.S. government that have been involved in this massive cover-up, the very kindest thing we can say is that they were aware of the impending attacks and let them happen.
Bob Bowman is a nuclear scientist and a former head of the Star Wars program. Bowman was voicing a theory that became known as LIHOP, let it happen on purpose. 2005 also saw the release of a video that became the first internet blockbuster.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Bring it back.
Loose Change, written and directed by 22-year-old Dylan Avery. Loose Change implied what a lot of people were coming to believe, that the government didn't just allow 9/11, but that it orchestrated it, made it happen on purpose, or MIHOP. But why would the U.S. government do such a thing?
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
In September of 2000, 1 year before 9/11, a think tank called the Project for a New American Century, consisting of future Bush administration officials Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Scooter Libby, Paul Wolfowitz, and media icon Bill Kristol, released a document called Rebuilding America's Defenses. They envisioned the expansion of U.S. military dominance on land, sea, air, space, and cyberspace. They envisioned multiple simultaneous large-scale wars. But they complained that the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor. Claremont College theologian and author David Ray Griffin.
The cumulative argument. You don't just focus on one thing and say everything hinges on this. You show that no matter where you begin with the official story, there are huge holes in it, contradictions of facts. No part of the official story stands up. That is very important to realize.
Griffin's reputation inspired others. Former Bush administration senior economist Morgan Reynolds.
In 2004, I eagerly awaited David Ray Griffin's The New Pearl Harbor. Wow, he's put a lot of this together, made a powerful case that the official story cannot be true.
In June 2005, Dr. Reynolds published an article presenting strong evidence for explosive demolitions at the World Trade Center. Along with dozens of other academics, Griffin and Reynolds became members of the Scholars for 9/11 Truth, as did a PhD mechanical engineer at Clemson University, Judy Wood.
And if no one else is stepping forward, we have no hope. So we need to do what we can do.
In September 2005, the U.S. government's National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, released their final study of the Twin Towers. The 10,000-page report contained very sophisticated computer models of the airplanes and the fires, but no effort was made to model or study the actual destruction. They dismissed it with 3 words. We went to McMaster University and spoke with chemical and nuclear engineer Frank Greening. Greening has created a mathematical model attempting to show that a gravity-driven collapse was possible.
They stop at that global collapse ensued famous mantra. They just say global collapse ensued, and then they walk away. It's like, it started collapsing, we can go home now. I kind of this takes over where NIST stops.
Greening and co-author Besant are continuing the original pile driver theory.
Upper block drops one floor, 3.7 meters, hits the floor below, somehow manages to break the support structures of that floor. That floor now is therefore added to the block. It now hits the next floor, so on down. So the mass of the upper block actually grows, and it just chews away at the building.
This is what Dr. Greening is imagining: a strong upper block pile driving down through the tower. But this is not what we see. What we see is the top part of the building disintegrates before the undamaged lower part moves an inch. Here's a different view. Watch the corner. So much for Greening's pile driver. As the towers were being destroyed, large ejections of debris were observed far below the main front. Loose change claimed they were explosive charges going off. NIST and popular mechanics tried to explain it away with a piston analogy.
When the top of that building comes down, all that air has to come out, and where it comes out the windows, it blows out the windows.
For a piston to work compressing air, it has to be sealed. I asked Dr. Greening how collapsing towers could be sealed.
There were elevator shafts and stairwells. The air could be pushed down those. In a sense, the building itself is self-sealing, so some of it would be pushed out of that particular floor, out of the windows.
This makes no sense. We've already seen that the piston disintegrates before it pushes down on anything. But imagine for a moment that floors are intact and sealed and pushing air down. They cannot fall any faster than free fall. The main collapse front has only had enough time to get down to this level, yet we are to believe that material 20 stories below has already been crushed? How can that possibly be? And there is another problem with the official collapse theory. Smoke from the fires was drifting up and off to the southeast because that's the way the breeze was blowing. As the buildings are destroyed, look what happens in this area.
Here's what I want to call your attention to is just look in this area right here, what happens to the smoke and how much it expands.
Distance between where that building is and that smoke increases because the building's falling down away from that area.
Yeah.
And yet, for some strange reason, that smoke begins to really expand and get.
Yeah, I've never seen that. I've seen this particular video, but that little puff there at the end is strange.
It's strange because expanding a smoke cloud into a mushroom shape against the wind requires tremendous heat energy. That's why we only see this kind of effect with powerful explosives. And there is another problem with believing in a gravity collapse: the floors. Each tower had 107 floors. Corrugated steel pans, an acre in size, were held up by steel trusses filled with steel reinforced concrete. Everyone agrees that a gravity collapse does not have nearly enough energy to pulverize steel floor pans. Supposedly 107 floor assemblies fell down right here. Where are they? Imagining that a skyscraper or any object can crush itself into dust under its own weight is cartoon physics. The official story has to be that the floors all landed in the footprint of the building, because if too much of the mass goes outside the footprint, there's not enough left to push down, and any sort of collapse would just stop.
Roughly, let's say 20% of mass shedding could be tolerated.
This is Brent Blanchard, a demolition expert and senior editor of Implosion World. Blanchard supports the official story and wrote a paper attempting to debunk 9/11 demolition theories. But he admits that there was basically nothing left in the footprint. Most of the mass was somehow converted into very fine dust and spread all over Lower Manhattan. Oops, I guess Mr. Blanchard didn't get the memo. A few steel sections remained intact. This 100-ton section was thrown over 300 feet to the west, where it landed in the Winter Garden. Tiny human bone fragments were found on the roof of this building years later. And there was yet another problem with the official story. The temperature of a heated metal can be determined by its color, and it doesn't matter which metal it is. Yellow indicates a temperature of 2,500 degrees. White is upwards of 3,000 degrees. For the last few minutes before the South Tower blew up, some yellow-hot molten metal began pouring out of a window at the 80th floor. Could the steel floor trusses be melting for some reason? Could it be melting aluminum from the airplane? Reportedly, the 81st floor was full of lead batteries for computer backup. Could it be melting lead? Whatever substance this is, it's at least 2,500 degrees, far hotter than can be explained by fire.
I found my
myself in the midst of a very sophisticated group of about 24 in December of 2005, it occurred to me that here we had the resources that might be very appropriate to found a society as a loose affiliation among scholars that would be devoted to the purpose of exposing falsehoods and revealing truths about 9/11. I invited David Griffin to be my co-chair. He declined, but he suggested Stephen Jones as a possibility. I invited Stephen to join me as co-chair, which he did, and I proceeded to found Scholars.
In September 2005, physicist Stephen Jones rocked the academic world by publishing a paper on the Brigham Young University website. The following February, Dr. Jones gave a lecture to a packed house. He demolished the official story and presented his theory that thermite was responsible for the destruction of the towers.
This is a steel structure now from the North Tower. Something glowing there, and then this trailing off smoke coming off of that. It certainly looks like thermite, but there's more. There was molten metal found beneath both towers and Building 7.
Thermite is a chemical reaction between aluminum powder and iron oxide. When ignited, the oxygen is torn away from the iron and bonds with the aluminum, forming aluminum oxide and molten iron. It can produce temperatures upwards of 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit.
I'd be delighted to go on the evidence for thermite, the observation of these iron-bearing spheres, tiny spheres in the dust in abundance, which match what I can do and have done with the thermite reaction. The thermite reaction produces spheres. They're rich in iron, also aluminum. That's the signature for thermite. We see the same signature in the spheres which are observed in the World Trade Center dust to NIST and the 9/11 Commission report in about 10 seconds. You might give it a little longer than that. It's hard to tell at the end, but say 12 or 13 seconds. A nice study by Professor Kenneth Cutler goes through the math, incorporating now conservation of energy and momentum, basically doing what NIST should have done, looking at the actual destruction sequence, not stopping at initiation. You say, well, if we conserve momentum, we have to consider the mass that's in the way. It takes energy out of this moving block of floor. So we say, okay, we'll let it initiate. We'll give NIST that. Somehow you get this initiation of a collapse. Now, what happens? The collapse just does not continue. It goes for a while and then it stops. It's slowing down and it stops.
Another member of Scholars, mechanical engineer Judy Wood, wasn't buying the official collapse theory either.
From the faculty conference room, I went up to my office, and I was thinking, if this was a collapse, one floor hitting another, which hit another, what would I expect? And I just did some real rough numbers and a real rough model in my mind, which later became the billiard ball example. It's an example to get your brain functioning. On 9/11, we saw images over and over again. Horror scenes, bodies dropping, terrible things. And we were trained to respond a certain way to that. So people have a difficult time wanting to go back and rethink that situation and relive it. So if we can step aside from that, just turn it into a little math problem, a little mental exercise. The person holding a red billiard ball out the window on the 100th floor can't drop his billiard ball until he sees the blue one from above drop by. Then he releases his. You can get a mental image of the timing. One floor can't start moving until it's been triggered to start moving. So how long does it take each floor to collapse down to get the next floor started? And when it hits the next one, it turns to dust. Supposedly, we're told it was getting pulverized by the impact. So going through this mental exercise, okay, we say every single floor, it would be 97 seconds from top to bottom. That's over a minute and a half. They went away faster than it would take to drop one ball off the roof and have it hit the pavement. So there wasn't enough time for that stuff to hit the ground.
You say, for example, that there were no planes that hit the World Trade Center? Is that your contention?
No, what I say is that there were no big Boeing crashes at all 4 events. There's no significant wreckage, for example.
Well, did you see the videotape that the rest of us saw?
Sure, and I encourage everybody to do a frame-by-frame penetration of the South Tower, and what you will see is a fake, a cartoon display. Because an aluminum plane cannot go through a building like the South Tower was, as if it were thin air.
What? No planes? Can he be serious? In films like The Big Lie and Loose Change, the claim had long been made that no plane crashed at the Pentagon or Shanksville, Pennsylvania. But the World Trade Center? I mean, we all saw planes crash on live TV. Didn't we?
Oh my goodness. Oh God. There's another one.
In fact, there were a number of personalities on the internet who were saying that no planes had really crashed at any of the 4 sites. Jim Hoffman drew a hard line, specifically disclaiming no plane theory. I trusted Jim Hoffman and his scholarly footnoted website. No planes? Ridiculous. Curiously, each plane made a bright flash just as it impacted the tower. What could possibly have caused that? It can't be any sort of static electricity charge. The nose of the aircraft is plastic. In March of 2007, I was writing an article for Morgan Reynolds' website asking libertarians to contemplate 9/11 truth as an opportunity to convince large numbers of people that big government is harmful. In a first draft, I gave evidence for demolition and mentioned something about the plane crashes.
What planes? Yeah, prove it up. We have an official plane story that's physically impossible. It defies basic Newtonian physics. And when people come to me about eyewitnesses, which eyewitness? Name one. Oh, thousands. And here a small group of us, Andrew Johnson being most important over in England, have gone through the FDNY and EMT accounts, and we're down, by the time you get down to I saw a plane, I heard it, and it crashed into the South Tower, you got one person.
Reynolds persuaded me to reconsider the official airplane theory. I realized then that I had not actually studied the evidence on planes for myself. I had simply taken the word of Jim Hoffman.
Collision of Flight 175 with the South Tower.
Where is the plane debris? Where is the debris below the impact zone? It's not there. Where is the aircraft debris in the gashes? You can see into that building 20 feet anyway. There's not one aircraft part identifiable. You can go to airdisaster.com and look at what plane crashes are really like. A Boeing 767 has 3.1 million parts. Where are all the parts? Where are the contents of the plane? The videos that allegedly show the penetration of the South Tower doesn't show a collision or a crash. There's no collision. What there is a glide in, an absorption, a disappearance of the plane image. Going, well, this is impossible. We know this. 6-year-olds know about this. This is not where there was no crash. There was no collision according to these videos.
Ignoring the explosions coming from within the tower, all of the United 175 crash videos look quite like this recreation using Google Earth. The aluminum airplane disappeared completely into the steel and concrete tower without bending, breaking, twisting, or slowing down. Not one piece of shattered airplane debris is seen. According to Newton's third law of motion, when one object collides with another, each receives an equal force in opposite directions. It doesn't matter which one is moving and which is holding still. Suppose we turn the problem around. If an airplane was suspended in midair and struck at over 500 miles per hour by a skyscraper, can we really believe that the airplane would go completely inside? Or would the result be something more like this, shattering the much weaker airplane and sending at least some of the material in the direction the building was moving? If this is a better representation for what happens when a tower hits a jet airplane, then the exact same would hold true when a jet airplane hits a tower. And there is another problem with the physics. Behind the wing of any flying airplane, there is a strong rotating vortex of air, like a sideways tornado. It's called wake vortex, and it is persistent, lasting for a minute or more. Of course, wake vortex is ordinarily invisible, unless there happens to be smoke in the air, or a giant fireball. The flame and smoke are forced to curl around the wingtip vortices. Now look at 9/11. We see no evidence that an airplane just flew through this airspace. We should see something like this. The official airplane videos look fake. We don't see any part of the airplane breaking, bending, buckling, twisting, or slowing down. It's unphysical. Ignoring the airplanes, the official 9/11 videos looked like this. They make much more sense with the airplane removed. We see a tower exploding. The wall doesn't break inwards, it explodes outwards. This was my epiphany. The 9/11 airplane videos surely must have been faked using animated airplanes. My simple 3D shatter effect, while it does correctly represent that some aircraft parts would rebound, is hardly realistic. But couldn't the compositrators have made more realistic airplane animations with shattered pieces falling to the ground? Well, actually, no. There are 3 insurmountable problems with that. 1. Time. Imagine trying to model something like this. Animating a shattering, exploding airplane is nearly impossible, while disappearing an airplane is easy. They needed to show the airplane videos quickly. 2. Penetration. They needed us to believe the planes went completely inside the towers, so that we could believe there was massive damage to the central core. 3. Debris. The falling debris would include seats and luggage and people. Thousands of matching items would have to be planted on the streets. It's impossible. A simulation was created that purported to show how airplanes could go completely inside a tower. Engineers and computer scientists at Purdue University created this animation of the plane crashing into the North Tower.
All the animated geometry seen here was created automatically from the simulation output data.
The visualization is supposedly created entirely from a structural engineering simulation. Yet we observe ridiculous impossibilities, such as this aluminum fuselage piece slicing right through a steel and concrete floor, and then the floor assembly coming right back together in one piece. We went to the computer science department at Purdue and spoke to Wojciech Popescu. This piece right here, it comes right through that floor, but then the floor heals up.
Heals up?
Doesn't it?
No, I don't think so.
Well, go forward. I think it's the same section on there. I guess it's a little bit later. That's a different edit. That's a different edit than I have.
Well, we added credits and we made a slightly longer version at some point. I don't know whether this is a longer or shorter version than what you have, but anyway.
Could it be that you took that part out?
Paul edited the video, but what exact part are you talking about?
Here's the part I'm talking about on the version I have.
Let's talk about this then.
This large gray piece of aluminum right here just appears to be cutting right through this floor assembly here, you see? You can turn it toward you. See that?
Right.
It's coming right through. Right on through. And then, after it passes by,
well,
floor assemblies don't back together again. I don't understand that.
I don't know where that, what exactly that is or what it is due to.
Okay. On 9/11, American Airlines Flight 11 appeared to enter the north face of the tower, while the exit wound was on the east face, as if the airplane debris took a left turn inside the building. The Purdue animation shows the exit wound from the opposite or south face. Once again, this part of the animation was missing from the version Mr. Popescu presented.
The civil engineering part of the team should really address this.
So, the next morning, we went to visit Meta Sozin, head of structural engineering at Purdue and leader of the civil engineering team that conducted the simulation. Now, was there any reality checking that went on, or what's your take on why your simulation has the stuff coming out the south face, and in reality we saw the stuff coming out the east face?
Yeah, you know, that's very much like the old Von Braun joke, where he said, "I shoot them up, I don't care where they come down."
What? Sozin is doing comedy? Should I add a laugh track?
I shoot them up, I don't care where they come down.
You want to see something I think is funny?
Don't tell anybody. 6. Attention Walmart shoppers, 9/11 was an inside job. Google World Trade Center 7 came down in 6.5 seconds. Thank you.
But you see, we came to Purdue looking for serious answers, and I don't think we got any. Meta Sozin also studied the events at the Pentagon. This is the so-called C-ring exit hole. Because it's so perfectly round, a lot of people think it must have been created by a shaped explosive charge. No engine or fuselage or much of anything was found in the area beyond.
What a perfect circle, isn't it? Yes. Well, look, anybody who playing baseball or cricket as a kid knows that when he or she breaks a window, it leaves a round hole. The question is, there was no airplane, say with respect to the Pentagon? Now, I cannot blame them because they say, where are the pieces of the airplane? Where are they? Nobody has seen them. Well, not nobody. The people who worked on the Pentagon immediately after the event, because I went there later, tell me that our government very carefully picked up all the pieces and put them in storage. That's what I'm told.
That may be what Professor Sozin was told, but to this day, the FBI investigations have failed to produce a single serial number part from a single 9/11 airplane. Not one.
The only other thing that was found was the engine on Murray Street, and the engine on Murray Street has been identified as either a CFM56 or the CF6, but whichever one it was, the CF6 or the CFM56, it had to be General Electric. And unfortunately, or fortunately, United Airlines used strictly Pratt & Whitney. So that engine that you see flying off, and that engine they say is from 175, isn't from 175 because the guys whose job was to dump it off there, you know, in a smoking, smoldering thing, dumped off the wrong engine.
John Lear filed a declaration explaining why the speed of United Airlines Flight 175 was impossible.
I filed an affidavit on January 28, 2008, this year, in support of the complaint and in opposition to the motion to dismiss. A lot of my information was taken from aerodynamics for naval aviators, and I explained why an airplane cannot fly 500 miles at 1,000 feet. It has to do with drag, and it has to do with power, and it has to do with the fact that they use turbofans. It just cannot happen.
At high altitudes, like 35,000 feet, where the engines are designed to fly at most of the time, the air is very thin. The fan and turbine sections are designed to efficiently accept enormous amounts of this thin air and produce an enormous amount of thrust. But at low altitudes, such as 1,000 feet, the air is over 3 times as dense. Attempting to go faster than the maximum operating speed of 414 miles per hour, the air is going to start jamming up in the engine. Because of the much denser air, the fan blades will start cavitating or choking, causing the engines to start spitting air back out the front. In other words, before ever getting close to the 540 miles per hour speed shown in the 9/11 airplane videos, the engine would start acting as a brake. In the summer of 2007, I began taking measurements of the airplane motion and the camera motion in the Chopper 5 video. To understand how looking at airplane and camera motion can help us spot a fake, let's consider this control case. This is a real-time composite video I made using an Avid system. One of the two planes was really in the shot. The other one was added. Which is which? We can track the motion of the airplane frame by frame. First, the Alaskan jet. We can see that the motion appears nice and smooth. Next, the Frontier jet is tracked. Its motion appears more jittery. Does this mean the Frontier jet is the fake? Well, not so fast. We must consider camera motion. The shot is a little shaky. Here, I've stabilized the footage, holding the building and the antenna motionless, removing the camera motion. Now, it's the Alaskan jet that appears jittery, while the Frontier jet is smooth. Stabilizing the footage made the motion of the Alaskan jet more jittery. This allows us to identify it as the fake. I did the same with the Chopper 5 footage, measuring the motion of the airplane before and after stabilizing the footage. As we can see, the motion of the plane becomes more jittery after stabilizing the footage. This is impossible with a real plane, but is exactly the kind of problem you will encounter in trying to composite a smooth jet into unstable helicopter footage. So I'm highly suspicious that the 9/11 airplane videos are fake. I don't think a real airplane could possibly behave like what we see in the videos or in the Purdue animations. I don't think the Purdue animations are based on any engineering at all. So I asked about Professor Sozin's data. If someone were to want to duplicate your results, are those data available, or can you make them available? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a cheesy answer. I can't duplicate my own results. However, because they're sensitive, sure, they're available, and sure, they're available, sure, they're available. And
repeated emails and phone calls to the Purdue scientists requesting the simulation data and requesting a high-quality, unedited copy of the animation have been ignored. Jared Holmgren has given a very powerful theoretical argument as to why they would never use real planes. Remember, the story is going to be that the suicidal hijackers crashed planes into the towers, causing massive structural damage and starting super hot fires. Later, the buildings collapse from the exact places the airplanes crashed. Any scenario involving suicidal hijackers is out. No human could be depended on to actually go through with it. Planes can be flown by remote control. But you wouldn't electronically hijack the real passenger flights, because as soon as you did, the pilots and crew would be on the radio saying, "Help! We've been electronically hijacked." Even if you could disable the radio, as the plane gets to low altitude, cell phones begin to work. Just one brief message would expose the plot. The real planes could be swapped with imposter drone planes, but you need to target the crashes with pinpoint accuracy. If the building demolition begins even one story below where the plane hit, this would be very difficult to call a collapse. It's doubtful that a clumsy Boeing 767 could be targeted with that degree of accuracy. And you need the plane to appear to completely penetrate the building so that people can imagine massive structural damage to the building core. Parts of a real airplane would break off and fall to the ground. Parts have serial numbers. Even one serial number part being found by the wrong person would be a very messy problem. Real planes leave real evidence. And don't forget, this event needs to be on live television. How do you do it? You do it by planting explosives in the building and inserting a fake airplane into the video. On August 18, 2001, the New York Times reported on a group of performance artists who had taken over an entire floor high in the North Tower. They were called Gelatin, and their art was called The Bee Thing. They had put up a maze of cardboard so that visitors could not see what they were up to. They left behind sketches that showed the exact number and location of core and perimeter columns, with lines that appear to show the direction of something entering the tower from outside. They removed windows and built a balcony. And this just happened to be at exactly the level where American Airlines Flight 11 would appear to hit just 3 weeks after the Times article ran. Performance art? Since when do performance artists even have the money to rent an entire floor of the North Tower for a year? Nonsense. Gelatin were explosives experts installing a fake airplane crash. And they weren't the only suspicious occupants. A fireproofing upgrade took place on the Twin Towers from 1999 to 2000. And look at which floors were upgraded. They correlate quite precisely with where the airplane supposedly went in. This would have given workers direct access to the structural steel. While much of the perimeter material on both towers appears to have exploded outwards, a few columns on the North Tower appear to have been bent inwards. How could they have done that? By removing floor trusses. Taking out the floor supports would make the floors sag, creating a strong inward pull between the perimeter and core. But can they really put a fake plane in news video? The key to solving 9/11 is to understand what's known as video compositing. Video compositing means taking two or more video images and putting them together so that they look like one. With today's technology, you must always remember, objects that look like they're in the shot may have actually been inserted. The 9/11 airplane videos are video composites. We know this because of the cartoon physics and from a few mistakes that are found in them. More on the mistakes in a moment. Here are the basics of how compositing works. Compositing is done by arranging video elements in a stack of layers. Some part of the top layer is made transparent, revealing the next layer underneath. Beginning with a stock 3D model of a Boeing 767, the plane is rotated so that it banks left. It's color corrected, motion blurred, scaled down, and animated. The rest of the layer is transparent, so it appears to fly in front of the tower. To make it appear to fly behind the tower requires some masking. The key to this trick, and the key to solving 9/11, is something called a key. In video, a key is an effect that makes part of a video transparent based on some property, like color or brightness. The tower video is copied into two separate layers. The sky is made transparent on the top layer with luminance key. Anything brighter than the adjustable threshold disappears. Notice that when the two layers are back together, it looks identical to the original. Remember, it's actually two layers stacked up. To complete the illusion, the airplane layer is sandwiched in between the other two. Presto! If the airplane goes too far, oops, it looks like it comes out the back side. To prevent this from happening, a mask can be drawn on the airplane layer. The south tower is in the center of the frame. The left half of the screen is masked off. The airplane goes in, and we never see it again. Under certain conditions, faking an airplane on live TV is pretty easy. Under other conditions, it's impossible. Only 3 9/11 airplane videos are confirmed to have been shown live: ABC Chopper 7, Fox Chopper 5, and WPIX. None of them actually shows an airplane hitting anything. With today's technology, making a live, real-time shot look like the CNN Hezarkhani shot would be impossible. But remember, the first time this was shown was many hours after the event. It just so happens that all of the live airplane videos were taken with the shady side of the tower next to a very bright sky. This makes pulling a key very easy. In a different shot, keying could be impossible. It just so happens that the live airplane videos have a steady camera with no panning or tilting or zooming in. If any of this camera motion had occurred while the airplane was on screen, compositing would have been impossible. It just so happens that the live shots share a remarkable list of compositional characteristics that make live video compositing possible. Absent any one of these, inserting a fake airplane live in real time becomes impossible. What are the odds that this occurred by chance? The WPIX and Chopper 7 shots seem to have been put together nicely. The same cannot be said for Chopper 5.
As you look at the picture from our chopper now arriving at the scene.
What is he talking about, arriving at the scene? The chopper is over the Hackensack River in New Jersey, 5 miles away. Why are they not headed toward what is already the news story of the year? Wait a minute, is something missing here? With the camera zoomed in, now it looks like the chopper is arriving at the scene. Seems that we weren't supposed to see that wide shot, and that's because there's no plane in it. By adjusting the scale and position of every video frame, matching the speed of the airplane and working backwards, we can determine where the plane should be earlier. The plane should be visible for over 5 seconds. That's 340 separate images, and there is no plane. In April 2008, I appeared with video compositing expert Steve Wright on the Hardfire television show hosted by Ron Wick.
I'm Ronald Wick.
And 2 weeks later, I interviewed him at his house.
Hello, Ace. Good to see you again.
Let's get the official story.
There is no official story.
And when I zoom out, I'm playing the video backwards, you can watch that helicopter just completely disappear off the screen. My explanation is the plane simply melted into the lack of resolution of the video system.
Of course, any object can disappear on video if it becomes small enough. The helicopter is far smaller than a big Boeing. It's a poor comparison. The question is whether a passenger jet disappears at 5 miles. To find out, I went and shot an airplane video under similar conditions, in the morning, with an airplane silhouette against a very bright sky. This was taken zoomed out from 6 miles away, a mile further than the Chopper 5 shot. I cut the horizontal resolution in half to simulate the quality of a VHS tape. The plane is small and blurry, but it appears in every single frame. Steve Wright offers no evidence to support his claim that the airplane would be too small to see.
Hey, this is Kai Simonson.
The camera op on board Chopper 5 was WNYW reporter Kai Simonson.
Well, I knew that the plane was coming in because the pilot told me. Well, the pilot said that the guy was flying really low, and he was heading for the tower.
The obvious thing then would be to point the camera at the airplane and follow it. Instead, Simonson zooms, and zooms, framing a shot of the towers. The airplane image enters the picture within one video frame. That's 1/30th of a second. What are the odds of that? By the way, Kai Simonson is not just a reporter for Fox 5. He also specializes in video compositing. In 2001, he was advertising his services of green screen compositing, helicopter videography, and an Avid system. Exactly the system needed to insert an airplane in real time. What are the odds of that? In any case, check out what happens next. The nose of the airplane appears to pop out the backside of the tower, Exactly the problem that could occur with live compositing. I offered Mr. Wright this multiple choice. 3 of them are the nose of the airplane before it goes into the building. 3 are the nose coming out of the building. Which are which? So how does an engine or a landing gear or dust or anything else become a size and a shape that's indistinguishable from an airplane nose? And not just any airplane nose, but a 767 nose, the very airplane that appears to go into the other side of the tower.
I think that the jet flying behind the building cannot be a composite. And the apparent nose sticking out cannot be the nose of a jet. Okay, it's a piece of debris. The fact that it has a similar shape is not important. The key is it's at the wrong time. The computer is moving my red outline along at a very constant, mathematically perfect velocity. It follows the airplane, and then the tracker moves to the other side of the tower, and look what happens. A real airplane, the nose would have popped out right here.
It is true that the airplane image slows down inside the tower. But of course, animated airplanes can be made to slow down, speed up, or do whatever. Mr. Wright's own instructional video from his seminar begins with,
bang, instant composite.
Of all things, a jet airplane.
Here is the motion curve for our horizontal move. And we'll play that back now. Zoom, there it slows down. Comes in quick, slows down at the end of the shot. Comes in quick, slows down at the end of the shot.
Why would the compositrators make the airplane come in quick and slow down at the end of the shot? To make it more believable. A real plane could not fly through steel and concrete as fast as it flies through air. But wouldn't Kai Simonson have thought to mask off the left half of the screen? Of course he would. The shot was designed to have the south tower right in the middle. A mask on the airplane layer prevents it from ever escaping the back of the tower. The plane would begin to disappear behind the edge of the tower, and the tail would slow down somewhat, and we would imagine that that was because the nose and wings had impacted the wall. But helicopters cannot hold still, they drift. We've already seen that Chopper 5 was late getting into position. The shot begins okay, but the camera drifts far enough so that the back edge of the tower is now outside the mask area. Simonson must have realized his mistake and quickly faded the picture down to black. When picture fades back up, all trace of the nose is gone. But it was too late. We saw Pinocchio's nose.
Watch how the aircraft penetrates the building. Completely in one side and out the other.
Just to be sure, there it is. There it is. The plane went right through the other tower of the World Trade Center.
It's physically impossible for the nose of a Boeing 767 airplane to emerge intact.
Well, how do you know that that's impossible?
It's hollow, made of plastic, and not designed to withstand any sort of collision.
That nose cone there is made of plastic, and it's very easily indented. They think that a bird hit that nose cone, which again is made of plastic. It's hollow inside.
It would have had to go through 2 sets of steel box columns.
It's obviously possible because it happened. You know, whether or not it can be sufficiently explained is another issue. There's a lot of things in life that can't be, fully explained. I mean, how many times have you seen a plane crash into the side of a building?
The no-plane wide shot and the nose-out mistakes in Chopper 5 thrust the compositors, the compositrators, into damage control mode.
Oh my goodness. Oh God.
A replay of Chopper 5 was attempted on CNN just a few minutes after the fact. But notice how everything is covered up by huge logo graphics.
Into the crash into the other tower of the World Trade Center. And again, let's just to be sure, there it is. There it is. The plane went right through.
Pinocchio's nose had to be explained away with new videos. Here's Gamma Press, shot from the opposite side, the east side, in the morning sunlight. The object is the size and shape of a 767 fuselage, like the Chopper 5 image, and it appears highly reflective, like it's made of metal. But then, a very bright flame gobbles it up in less than 1 second, and it disappears. Clearly impossible behavior for any sort of metal airplane part. Later, it was discovered that there was no exit wound. There are 0 broken columns in this area. Any sort of solid object is ruled out. Enter the dust explosion. This is footage shot by the Naudet brothers. It doesn't show any metallic cylinder, and it looks nothing like the fuselage of an airplane. They've made it a dust explosion. And the 1 second that would show the fate of Pinocchio's nose has been edited out. Why would the Naudet brothers remove that little piece of video? I've inserted black to hold the missing time in the Naudet shot and synchronized it with Chopper 5 and also the CNN live shot, which was airing a feed of ABC Chopper 7. All 3 of these videos have blackouts or missing time within a 1/4 second of each other, and it's the same time that would show the fate of Pinocchio's nose. What are the odds that this occurred by chance? The Chopper 5 fade to black cannot be any sort of signal interruption. Signal interruptions happen all the time from news choppers, but they look like this if they're analog, and they pixelate and freeze if they're digital. In video, black is a picture. Video sync in Chopper 5 is never lost. Mr. Wright tried to explain away the fade to black this way.
All of these cameras have a little circuit called automatic gain control. What those circuits do is they detect the amount of light that's coming into the camera. And if the light gets too bright, it knocks the iris down to darken the picture to restore a more normal exposure. So here's what happened in this shot. We're single-stepping the plane out of the building. Okay. Then the explosion starts. A fireball starts to show, and right about here, the automatic gain control sees this fireball. And just like a human being who closes his eyes and ducks away from a bright light, the camera is starting to iris down the picture in response to this flare of fire. So it goes down in 2 frames. It holds it for 14. And then the automatic gain control circuitry starts to recover and puts the picture back where it was.
All video cameras, even consumer models, have the automatic gain control, but they never make a camera go to black. Here, I'm pointing a camera at the sun, and it doesn't go black. News cameras record flames and explosions all the time, including on 9/11. Kai Simonson offered this explanation for the fade to black.
I don't know if it didn't fade to black. What happened was I put the 2x extender in, which actually doubled the strength of the lens. I was made aware that the plane was getting close to the building, so I zoomed in closer to get a closer shot with the 2x extender, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the actual 2x extender flip into the lens, and it actually, slides into place. So there's a moment where it actually goes black because you're seeing the edge of the extender pass over the focal plane.
It's nice to get an explanation from the guy who shot the footage, but he's lying. Engaging a 2x lens extender will not make the entire picture go black at the same time, but it will make everything twice as big. That's what 2x means. We certainly don't see that.
I'm saying it's impossible to do this keying for this project in real time.
Wow, that's quite a claim. Mr. Wright is not just saying the 9/11 airplane videos were not composited, he's saying they could not have been. One of his reasons has to do with edges.
This would have to be a luma key, okay, where you're pulling a key based on the brightness difference between the sky and the tower. A luma key is a very poor quality matte. You get jagged edges.
All compositing software have luma key and a feature called edge feathering, where the edges of the luma key matte can be made as soft as desired. Steve Wright must know this. He literally wrote the book. In fact, on page 14 of his book, Wright explains. Why would Steve Wright try to convince us that video composites must have harsh edges? And it gets deeper.
The raster lines that make up this jet match perfectly with the raster lines of the original, what we're calling the live action video. Okay? These lines, the interlace lines here. Okay? If this jet was on a different layer, you cannot pull a key on these little skinny lines. You need a nice solid outline.
Television video is made up of horizontal scan lines.
When you have an interlaced image like this, you can't manipulate it because those field lines are one scan line tall. And if you try to rotate it or scale it, the lines start to blend together and you get a mishmash.
Mr. Wright is claiming that because the scan lines of the airplane align perfectly with the scan lines of the tower, this proves it could not have been a composite. By this logic, we better watch out for real live dinosaurs. The scan lines of the dinosaur align perfectly with the woman's head. Does this mean it's a real dinosaur? Notice that on Gamma Press and Now Day, Pinocchio's nose casts a very dark shadow across the face of the tower. But look at Chopper 5. There's no shadow because it's a live composite and the nose was never supposed to pop out like this. The Chopper 5 sequence was never replayed and has never appeared in any of the government documentaries. They took it and flushed it down the memory hole. While the Chopper 5 was a live video composite with mistakes in it, there were also mistakes made in the edited videos that came later. The clearest image of United Flight 175 going into the South Tower was allegedly shot by amateur Michael Hezarkhani and obtained by CNN. The Hezarkhani footage has come to be known as Ghost Plane, and for good reason. The plane appears to pass through steel columns and the steel and concrete floors, like a ghost. It doesn't twist, bend, slow down, break, or explode. We never see any damage occur to the airplane. After an edit, we see a big airplane-shaped hole. We don't know how much time is missing in this edit, and we never see the hole forming. This one image gives the game away. The right wing of the plane has passed beyond the wall, yet no damage has occurred. We know there's plenty enough picture quality to see the big gaping hole if it were there because of this later shot. This is taken with the same camera, same zoom, and we easily see the big dark hole. What is Mr. Wright's explanation for this?
The hole got larger because the explosion blew the hole larger than the airplane's entrance. The explosion has blown out big chunks, so the hole got larger.
Mr. Wright is complimented for his creativity, but his explanation probes the far outer limits of absurdity. He's claiming that a kerosene explosion can cut steel. Explosives that really can cut steel do so by moving air very fast, from 10,000 to 30,000 feet per second. The fireball is moving air no more than around 100 feet per second tops. The idea of cutting steel with kerosene is ridiculous.
That's a kerosene explosion which has almost no destructive power.
Well, that's the statement of a musician.
It's like being in the fourth dimension.
Evan Fairbanks shot some very famous footage and appeared on ABC News the night of 9/11.
Watch how the aircraft penetrates the building. Go ahead. Completely in one side and out the other.
It just disappeared. It disappeared like a bad special effect.
The airplane did disappear like a bad special effect. Exactly like a bad special effect. The plane doesn't break, twist, bend, crumple, explode, or even slow down. The building explodes from within, long after the plane appears to go in. A good special effect would have parts exploding and bouncing off and tumbling to the streets below. I'm not sure it's even possible. I certainly can't animate a realistic airplane crash, but I can do one that's as good as Hezarkhani.
The result is footage that's every bit as convincing as the original ghost plane footage, which is to say, not completely convincing. In both shots, we don't see any parts of the airplane breaking or bending or twisting.
Another thing that was bad about the special effect in Fairbanks is a blatant contradiction with the special effect in Hezarkhani. Here's Hezarkhani, and here's Fairbanks. In Hezarkhani, as the plane enters the tower, the engines turn into puffballs. We are to believe that these are the engines themselves, or building materials, or something. But whatever the puffballs are meant to represent, notice that they are clearly underneath the wings, as the engines were. Now, look at the Fairbanks video. The location of the wing entrance can easily be marked, and obviously the puffball is well above the left wing. The over-under puffball is irreconcilable with reality, but has an easy explanation in video compositing. The mask was in the wrong place. In this 3D model, two white spheres represent the location of the puffballs. With the mask in the correct location, the left wing appears to pass over the puffball. Changing only the mask, the left wing now appears to pass under the puffball. They didn't have time to do good special effects. They needed to create airplane composites from a number of different camera angles rather quickly. With a 3D model, the airplane flight can easily be rendered from any camera angle. There's footage of the tower exploding, but how does the compositor know exactly where in time to place the airplane? A little too early or late would cause a discrepancy with the different angles. How can all the airplane overlays be synchronized? Have you ever wondered why they put a flash and a beep at the beginning of a show? Or why they use a clapperboard at the beginning of a scene?
Mark?
It's for synchronization. The audio and video events are very sudden, lasting only one frame, so they make for a precise time reference.
Mark?
The Twin Tower events each featured a bright flash right when the airplane nose appears to meet the tower. The flashes make a very handy marker for where to place the nose of the airplane in both time and space. On all of the prepared airplane layers, there is designated a particular frame to be the one where the plane impacts the tower. In the editing software, the impact frame is moved to line up with the flash frame.
We've seen these images in movies and we know that it's all artificial and Hollywood makes it.
Notice that when they showed Fairbanks on ABC, there was no sound. In a speech to the New York Historical Society, Fairbanks blamed the FBI for removing the sound. However, in a later conversation with Jeff Hill, Fairbanks changed his story.
Well, I had accidentally turned off the microphone, like a kind of like a operator error, because it was the first time that I had ever used that camera.
And when the Fairbanks footage appeared in the In Memoriam DVD, we heard this. Sound effects make visual effects more believable.
Just a few moments ago, you can hear around me.
The History Channel website offers more Evan Fairbanks footage, and they say it's unfiltered. It certainly appears to have sound on it. Brian! Speaking of sound effects, here's the Hezarkhani footage as it appeared on the DVD CNN America Remembers.
Oh my God, the plane just crashed into the building. Cannot believe it. Oh my God.
I suppose that's Michael Hezarkhani himself talking. Whoever it is sounds very close to the microphone. But here's the first time CNN aired the Hezarkhani footage, late on the evening of 9/11. We hear the same background screaming. But where's the guy saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe it, a plane flew in the building"? Seems like they added that to suggest we ignore the bad special effect and just think airplane. The compositional characteristics. No plane in the wide shot. Unstable motion. Pinocchio's nose and its missing shadow. Blackouts and suspicious editing. The over-under puffball contradiction. Magically healing columns. The complete lack of crash physics. No wake vortex. Understanding video compositing, both its capabilities and its limitations, goes a long way towards solving 9/11. It's been proven a number of ways that the Twin Towers were blown to kingdom come. Still, official story supporters can fool some people by waving their hands and citing government reports. But all of the various attempts at a collapse theory begin by assuming plane crashes. No planes at the World Trade Center ends the argument. Still not convinced that the 9/11 airplane videos are fake? You want to prove me wrong? Great. Show me an original video of an airplane penetrating the South Tower. Let me make a high-quality copy and I'll pay you $100,000. The airplane videos that do exist all have reduced picture quality. And I think that's because reducing the quality is the best way to hide the messy fingerprints of the compositing process. Because of the live videos, we can rule out not only planes, but any real flying object, like a missile. To cover up an incoming missile with a fake airplane would require a process called motion tracking. Software identifies the position of a particular pattern frame by frame. The same motion can then be applied to another object. Motion tracking works, but can generate errors that have to be corrected by hand. In 2001, motion tracking did not work in real time. Today, real-time motion tracking exists, but still is not nearly reliable enough to track an incoming missile. One small tracking error would cause the airplane image to jump or might reveal the missile underneath. There's no way the compositrators would even consider trying to cover up an incoming flying object in real time.
Hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
I
did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
I didn't see any airplane.
Did you see it? Yes, I saw it. It just blew up. A big explosion.
And everything I saw told me it was bombs in the building.
And then the South Tower just exploded.
The second building went off.
It just blew up.
No second plane. It was a bomb. Bomb in another building, not second plane.
I was underneath it. I was looking at the tower. I had my camera in my hand. I heard the noise. I never saw the airplane.
That was a bomb. Who said the second plane?
I never saw the airplane.
That's what we're told. The second plane. We saw it on television.
I never saw the airplane.
I did not see a plane. I didn't see any airplane.
Just blew up.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a plane. I learned that from the news media.
And we saw it on television. And we saw it on television. And we saw it on television.
We know for certain that the towers were disintegrated with powerful explosives, that Building 7 was brought down in a classic controlled demolition, that to start the day off, the media inserted fake airplanes into video and called it news.
Oh my goodness. Oh God. There's another one.
Completely in one side and out the other.
It just disappeared. It disappeared like a bad special effect.
To help us get our mind around the phenomena at the World Trade Center, Dr. Judy Wood begins by reminding us how much structure was there.
We have two towers, huge towers, very large objects once upon a time. Let's look at how they're built. The core columns, huge beefy beams. And then we have the outer columns and floors bolted between the two. These floors are pretty elaborate structures with this webbing of trusses underneath. Can you imagine putting your arms around one of these beams? It's pretty large. I look at this picture and wonder how someone could believe that every single piece of cross-section would disintegrate at the same time, due to heat, due to whatever. And as they're building it, you can see the very substantial core columns. Looks like it's half the floor space. And then they went away. So here we have WTC-3, also known as the Marriott Hotel. Right after WTC-2 was destroyed, had this big gouge out of it. Vertical slice separating the southernmost edge of it. This was before Tower 1 was destroyed, and when Tower 1 was destroyed, the rest of this building went away. And we have these 3 wheat checks stabbed into the pavement. And here is what's left. This little tiny stub looked like it was the base of this tall, narrow portion. Just a little tiny bit of it left. This is looking north-northeast, across where Tower 1 used to stand. Where'd it go? From this down to here's a top view of the site. Building 4, you don't have the main body of it, you just have the north wing. Where did it go? Where are the towers? Bankers Trust is 40 stories, so we're missing 60 or 70 stories of building, more than half of it. Where'd it go? Where are the towers? Where are the towers? Where'd it go? Tower 1 is so overshadowed by this 8-story remnants of Building 6. What's wrong with this picture? You should have at least 100 more stories of the north wall of Tower 1. Where is the north wall? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where are the towers? How much energy did it take? Well, let's look at some pattern recognition here. We have Mount St. Helens. We have a nuclear test in Nevada. And we have one of the WTC buildings coming apart. To me, they look similar. Probably a similar amount of energy was involved. This is Hiroshima. A few days before Hiroshima, would anyone have imagined this? Just everything gone.
Dr. Wood documented phenomena so unusual, she had to coin new terms like dustification.
So what about the dust? There was a lot of dust. As it happens, here is Tower 1 and Tower 2. A large portion of it filled New York, filled the air, went everywhere. And it looks pretty uniform in size, except for the paper. Landed on the fruit. It's like a fresh snow. Here's a view from the north. What covered the wheat checks was aluminum cladding, which you can see those pieces falling off, but they don't trail dust. But the steel wheat checks trail dust. This is an interesting. This is a rather large wheat checks falling here with dust shooting out behind it. Is the building just turning to dust? Interesting. This is a rather large wheat checks falling here with dust shooting out behind it. Is the building just turning to dust? Why? This is Tower 2 closer to the ground. Do you see any solid pieces of building coming down? I don't. I see aluminum cladding falling, but the rest is this type of dust that seems to trail behind the wheat checks. And then we have dust everywhere. This Cushman scooter kicks up dust that just stays in the air. If you drive down a dirt road, your pickup truck is going to kick up dust, but it pretty quickly settles out. This does not settle out like that.
The reason the dust stays in the air is because of the ultrafine particle size, below 1/4 of a micron in diameter. Thomas Cahill of the University of Davis, California, studied the particle size distribution of the minerals in the fumes. Typical mechanical crushing creates coarse and fine particles. Very fine and ultrafine particles are essentially non-existent. The graph heads to zero and stays there. Now look at what was measured at ground zero. There is an extraordinary presence of ultrafine particles. This is conclusive proof that molecular dissociation took place. Cahill did not count particles less than 0.09 microns. Is this because he was afraid of what he knew he would find?
Here are 4 consecutive shots, and you can see these columns just turn to dust. Here's a video clip, and you can watch this turn to dust. So is this what happened to the entire building? Perhaps. Let's look at it a little bit more carefully. These core columns that were left standing for whatever reason are strong and rigid. That's a very tall, unsupported column. And the next frame, it starts to tip, and then it turns to dust before it even tips over. And as this dust cloud rolls out, it's very energetic. It looks like it's boiling. It's expanding in all directions. Tremendous amount of dust.
The behavior of the dust clouds greatly resembled a phenomenon seen in volcanic eruptions.
Known as a pyroclastic flow, this eruption of 1,500-degree gas and rock speeds down the mountain.
The disintegration of the buildings was not the only bizarre 9/11 mystery. We have holes.
So let's look at those holes. Look at the scale using these wheat checks here, because we know about what the spacing is on them. You can figure out these are about 24-foot diameter holes, or cylindrical cutouts. Many of them the same diameter. Look how far down the middle of that hole is. It's empty down to the ground level. 8 stories of building, gone. This is a look from inside that hole. You count down from the top, you can count down 8 stories. So you know you're at ground level. Then we have building 5 that was over in the northeast corner. Nice round cylindrical holes. This one turns out there's a roof flap hanging over it, but it's still the cylindrical cutout. And this one looks like a larger diameter. But what caused those round holes? We have this cylindrical cutout in the middle of Liberty Street. You notice this outer wall is sort of leaning back, and it's got a cutout missing that lines up with that hole. Kind of interesting. We look down into that hole. It's just what caused the hole. It's open. We also notice these different sub-levels have the reinforced concrete bars sticking out of it. And this piece of I-beam is pretty fascinating. It looks like it just withered away to nothing. It's eroded to nothing, thinned out. And there's another hole up here. When you start looking at this, you start noticing lots of little holes, and they coalesce into bigger holes. So if we look at all of these grouped together, lift off a few of the wheat checks that are laying over the top of them, we can look down into that hole and climb down into it. We're climbing down into the basement of the second tower, and to me it looks that these folks are walking through a puddle of water. We may have heard of rumors of molten metal, but I see no indication of it here. And this picture was taken a week after 9/11.
Dr. Wood was denying the existence of molten metal at Ground Zero, denying extreme high temperatures in general. Yet the effects of extraordinary heat were all around. We have this fused mass of steel and concrete that's known as the meteorite. we see the mushroom cloud expand rapidly, upwards and outwards against the wind. In fact, the Twin Towers mostly disintegrated into shooting point sources trailing what resembles rocket exhaust. Rocket exhaust looks the way it does because it is expanding in all directions, and that is because it is moving from very high temperature and pressure to much lower temperature and pressure. Spraying whipped cream behaves the same way for the same reason. The contents of the can are under great pressure. When any substance expands outwards in all directions, there is simply no other explanation besides a rapid release of built-up pressure.
And as we get closer to the center of this, it gets hotter and hotter. It's probably 1,500 degrees. We've had some small windows into what we thought was a core at some point, and it looked like an oven. You know, it was just roaring inside. And it was just a bright reddish orange color. See that stuff he's pulling out? What was that, Chief? We're gonna hold off on the water. See the stuff he's pulling out? Yeah. It's red hot.
Another interesting phenomenon is toasted cars. Large number of toasted cars. I don't mean just a few burnout cars. I mean this weird things happening that don't make sense. After Tower 1 was destroyed, that's the second tower that was destroyed, suddenly these cars were on fire. There's mountains of paper in between, large volumes of paper that didn't burn. Why are these cars over here on fire where nothing between the tower and the car is? And after the fire stopped, we noticed the cars are all rusted. Thanks a lot. Then there's cars over on FDR Drive that had another peculiar pattern to them. This door looks like it just wilted, and the frames for the windows flopped over to melt. And we have various other interesting patterns. This vehicle was parked a building away on the other side of the post office. What happened to it? If it had debris fall through it, why isn't the roof destroyed? This side's eaten out, wheels eaten, fire, spontaneous combustion. Here's that toasted lot. Paint is fine here, not here. And don't know what that is. Is it a car, truck? I call it the what's it car. This vehicle is sitting on top of this one. Why is it so rusted? This is the day after 9/11.
Look at these two cars placed on top of one another. I think when you think about the impact that these planes must have had, it's hard to visualize it because everything melted. But here, at least you have some remnants. You have literally an engine that is melded together with other parts of the car. Moving over, you've got another car they moved here. It looks like it's been through a war. You can see the papers, all the burned out papers from the building. You see the soot and the dirt, and it just shows you how devastating this blast was. Look across the street there. You've got a Con Ed truck that some of the Con Ed people now looking at, examining, trying to figure out which truck that actually was. But that truck too, in terrible shape. So while many of the items, the steel was literally melted.
We see more of these strange phenomena. Cars burning, not paper. Paper in the tree lost its leaves. Paper on the ground, only vehicles burning. That's pretty aggressive burning. Another one lost its engine. Where'd it go? Same here. Engine's gone. So is the cab. And the ladder just kind of wilted down over it. Van with missing door handles. That seemed to be a common theme. A lot of door handles gone. Different kind of material. This is West Broadway. So what happened on that street? Here's a top view of that same street. This aggressive cloud looks like it did something unique. Because all the vehicles along this street were toasted. Maker's Trust across the street had some interesting events occur. This building, according to FEMA, had no fires in it. What happened to this beam? That's not from a mechanical overload. This was a horizontal beam supporting the floors. Why would it shrivel up that way? Like you would curl a ribbon for a package.
Horizontal structural beams are under great tension. If some extremely hot reacting substance went by, and then tension was lost, shriveling up is exactly what would happen. Clearly, something extraordinary destroyed the World Trade Center. But what? According to Dr. Wood, it was some kind of directed energy weapon. Along with co-author Morgan Reynolds, they released the Star Wars beam weapon. Although she does have some curious blind spots, without doubt, Dr. Judy Wood created the most comprehensive study of the visual record.
The entire top of the building just collapsed.
The entire building just collapsed.
The building just collapsed.
So we know they do have some weapons and devices, directed energy weapons that we don't know about. We didn't know about until this. And there's pictures of them. We have this shoots down things. You add more onto this, you get more power. We don't know how much power is required. These are publicly available images of different types of weaponry they plan to put in orbit, or is it already in orbit? We don't know. What we do know is there used to be 2 towers here, and they aren't there anymore.
Are directed energy weapons the best explanation? Or could nuclear reactions better account for the phenomena?
Like any other nuclear weapon, the Davy Crockett gives off 3 basic effects: heat, blast, and nuclear radiation.
Notice the geometry of this nuclear explosion. A chemical signature of nuclear fusion is tritium, the radioactive isotope of hydrogen. Tritium levels 55 times higher than normal were found in the sewer water below ground zero. Stephen Jones is an expert in nuclear fusion, so we traveled to a 9/11 Truth Conference in Indiana and asked Stephen Jones about that.
Tritium is an interesting character because tritium can come from other sources. And backlights of exit, I'm not saying that's what it was, but it could be just something like that. In other words, it can be a contaminant that arises not from nuclear reactions, but from backlighting. And so, yes, the tritium was high, and that was reported and published, but it is not proof of many nukes.
That's the official story. Supposedly, the two airplanes had about 34 curies of tritium in the exit signs. Tritium is a lightweight gas. It's hydrogen. When released, it goes up into the upper atmosphere. To make it down into the water sample, it must first somehow be converted into tritiated water and sprinkled down to the ground into the sewer system, get diluted by 2 heavy rainstorms and 1 million gallons of fire hose water, and still raise the sample up to 55 times the normal background level. In 1965, in Council, Alaska, there was a building fire involving the release of 3,000 curies of tritium, about 100 times more than what was supposedly released by the 9/11 airplanes. Water samples from that incident showed no tritium. None. Nuclear fusion can be initiated with a nuclear fission trigger. Uranium in nuclear fission typically breaks down into 2 rare elements, strontium and barium. The U.S. Geological Survey took samples from around Lower Manhattan. Taken right at ground zero. A nuclear event would also explain this. Ground Zero fumed for over 100 days through rainstorms, freezing temperatures, and constant watering. Judy Wood identifies the effect as ongoing molecular dissociation.
What is this haze? Is it fire? Fire would have a point source. You could see where the fire was coming from, where it would be the strongest. Also, smoke tends to go up. This is just looming over the ground zero remnants. No point source, it's just hanging around there. What is it? This photo was taken at the end of October, Halloween, actually. But what is this white around here? If it were hot, these people would be cooked like on a grill. And its hydraulics wouldn't work. Not only that, they'd permanently destroy their equipment. So they wouldn't have their equipment sitting there if it was going to be destroyed. The people wouldn't be alive if it were hot. What is this white stuff coming out of the ground? And then we notice up above here, you see misting. Why are they misting this? It's not fire. It's not hot. Doesn't seem to be any more where the water is coming from. Water is just being added to this pile. But that's very dense white stuff, whatever it is.
I don't
white smoke for 100 days.
White
Sorry,
smoke for 100 days. Well, yeah, makes you really wonder. Dr. Jones is rightly incredulous about the official smoldering fire story.
Actually, some samples of that were taken by Thomas Cahill, UC Davis. I've been in communication with Tom. Thermite, the reaction produces aluminum oxide that comes off as an ash, a very fine powdery ash. But when it came to the question of aluminum oxide, he didn't answer. He wasn't impolite to me, he just simply didn't answer.
A nuclear fission chain reaction, once begun, continues until all the fissionable material is gone. This is the so-called China syndrome, where heavy reacting elements burn downwards through everything. Could that be what caused this? This hole in the bedrock is directly under where the South Tower stood. The workers are filling in the hole with concrete. The surrounding rock appears to have melted and then re-solidified. Janitor Felipe David was working inside the North Tower. His co-worker, Willie Rodriguez, describes skin that was hanging off his body.
Everybody started screaming, and a person comes running into the office saying, "Explosion, explosion, explosion." He got his hand extended, and all the skin was pulled from his under his arm, all the way to the top of the fingertips, and it was hanging on both arms. Hanging and hanging.
Exactly the same type of horrific radiation effect was described at Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. Inexplicable numbers of Ground Zero workers are coming down with rare cancers like leukemia and thyroid cancer. According to medical doctor Ed Ward, only radiation can explain this. First responder Matthew Tartaglia.
In January and February of 2002, it became clear that I was very, very sick. I started sweating constantly, and I would just walk down the hall and to go to the bathroom or to get something to eat or get a cup of coffee, and I could not breathe.
Tritium, strontium, and barium. Molecular dissociation. The meteorite. The mushroom cloud. The China syndrome. 1,400 melted motor vehicles. Rare cancers. Are we really supposed to believe that airplane crashes caused all that? We know for certain that the towers were disintegrated with powerful explosives, that Building 7 was brought down in a classic controlled demolition, that to start the day off, the media inserted fake airplanes into video and called it news.
Oh my goodness. Oh God. There's another one.
Completely in one side and out the other.
It just disappeared. It disappeared like a bad special effect.
This much is now proven. Many 9/11 mysteries have been solved, but perplexing human questions remain. Since there is such indisputable evidence, how did the perpetrators get away with this? Why do most people support the official story? And even within the 9/11 truth movement, why is there such venomous conflict? Discussion of the airplane hoax is forbidden on almost all 9/11 truth sites. Why? Why is the truth movement such a catastrophic failure?
Encouraging. I believe that we're beginning to appreciate that it's
On October 30, 1938, the Mercury Theater broadcast a radio performance about a Martian invasion called War of the Worlds. The fictional drama, directed and narrated by Orson Welles, was presented as news bulletins.
We interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
The announcer did provide occasional disclaimers, informing the audience that it was a dramatic performance. And the story itself was far-fetched.
The eyes, it might be a face, might be almost... Good heavens, something wriggling out of the shadow like a gray snake. Now it's another one, and another one, and another one. They look like tentacles to me.
Nevertheless, because it was packaged as news, many people tuning in believed it.
The flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Lord, they're turning into flames. Now the whole field's caught up by the woods of fire.
There was panic. Interestingly, many people formed false memories. Some claimed to have seen things, felt things, or smelled things that weren't really there at all. A very important lesson was learned that day back in 1938. Mass media wield the power of mind control. When sufficiently traumatized, masses of people will believe the impossible. Human emotional hot buttons are well known to all story writers. To accomplish genuine mind control, what remains is to take a fantastic fictional story and present it as present tense fact. That is, news. And while the mind control powers of radio news are strong, television news is awesome. The writers of 9/11 borrowed heavily from the War of the Worlds script and threw in a few new surprises.
At 8:50 p.m., a huge flaming object,
sparks and fire.
Lord, they're turning into flames.
It's almost like a mushroom cloud explosion. This huge.
Reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars.
There has just been a huge explosion.
Now the smoke's spreading faster. It reaches Times Square. People are trying to run away from it, but it's no use.
Scene, and We set up headquarters at 75 Barclay Street.
Where he has established an emergency observation post.
And we were operating out of there when we were told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse.
Everything wiped out.
Absolute disintegration of one of those twin trade center towers.
Do you believe it's hundreds or thousands?
At least 40 people, including 6 state troopers, lie dead.
The plane is 50 miles out.
800 yards.
The plane is 30 miles out.
600.
The plane is 10 miles out.
400.
Do the orders still standing?
Only one thing left. Jump on the plane and all.
Smoke comes out, black smoke drifting over the city.
Looks almost like a real war.
This is an act of war.
They were acts of war.
Then what?
I turned my head out the window and would have sworn I was dreaming.
It seemed like it wasn't even real.
It's my guess that in some way they are able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute non-conductivity.
It was the heat that began to melt the steel.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country.
The American people need to know we're facing a different enemy than we have ever faced.
And we may place our fate in the military forces.
The United States of America will use all our resources to conquer this enemy.
That we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united.
America's united.
Courageous and consecrated to the preservation of
our way of life. This will be a monumental struggle of good versus evil. But good will prevail.
I thank you.
The 9/11 news reporters certainly seemed to be reading from a script. No sooner did we see a plane go into a tower than Fox 5 anchor Jim Ryan told us it was obviously suicidal hijackers.
Obviously, suicide, terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. What we have been fearing.
Chopper 5, anybody on?
23 minutes later, they had already solved the case.
All the concerns about terrorism, of course, the name Osama bin Laden was greatly mentioned.
Listen as the male anchor from Fox 5 Washington struggles to find the words to describe what he sees, while the female anchor fears he might have missed the talking point.
The tower has collapsed.
Yeah.
The tower collapsed.
And it looks like we're seeing...
the tower collapsed.
They could not risk allowing the people to form their own opinions about what they were seeing. It was imperative to immediately implant the word collapse into your mind.
One of those towers, 110 stories, has apparently collapsed.
The towers collapsed within minutes of one another.
The second tower just collapsing into a pile of rubble.
They were so eager to propagate the collapse meme, they jumped the gun in the case of Building 7, also known as the Salomon Brothers Building, and accidentally read the script 20 minutes before it actually happened.
On the latest building collapse in New York, you might have heard a few moments ago, was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks.
They already told you it collapsed and gave you the official reason why it collapsed.
As you can see behind me,
we can see behind Jane, and we see that Building 7 is still standing. Of course, Building 7 does drop straight down into its own footprint in free-fall time, just like a standard controlled demolition. But this happens 20 minutes later. This is no less suspicious than if they had announced the Kennedy assassination 20 minutes before it happened.
Bulletin. This is from the United Press from Dallas. President Kennedy and Governor John Connally have been cut down by assassins' bullets in downtown Dallas.
The phrase "on purpose" was clearly in the memo.
If it was a plane, was it in any sense deliberate?
We don't know yet whether this was an accident, some sort of planned incident.
It did seem to you that it was done on purpose? It appeared to bank sharply and smash directly, perhaps purposefully, into, oh my goodness.
Oh, God.
There's another one.
Oh, there's another one.
Oh my goodness, there's another one.
This seems to be on purpose.
That was definitely looked like it was on purpose.
This does not look like an accident of any kind at this point. Another plane has hit Tower 2, the Twin Towers. You hate to say the words, but what comes to mind right now, terrorist attack.
Bryant Gumbel just happened to be talking to his producer's wife, Teresa Renault, at the time of the second alleged plane strike. Instead of responding to Gumbel, Ms. Renault seems to be reciting talking points, as if someone is there prompting her.
Oh my God, another plane has just hit another building. Flew right into the middle of it. Explosion. My God, it's right in the middle of the building.
This one into the East Tower.
Yes, yes, right in the middle of the building. And right now, that was definitely looked like it was on purpose.
Since there was no real jet plane crashing, they needed to create a lot of confusion and uncertainty among the fake witnesses.
Why do you say that was definitely on purpose?
Because it just flew straight into it. It didn't look like it was, and it didn't look like a commercial jet.
It just seemed like a smaller plane. I don't think it was anything commercial.
This makes it easier to believe that the people who were there and did not see a plane simply missed it.
Yeah, about 10 minutes later, the second building went off.
Did you see it?
Yes, I saw it. It just blew up. A big explosion. People started running. It was just chaos everywhere.
No second plane. It was a bomb. Bomb in another building, not second plane. It was a bomb. Who said the second plane?
That's what we're told, the second plane. We saw it on television.
I saw everything.
All right, thanks a lot. This is...
The first one went off, and then 10 minutes later, this just blew up out of nowhere.
Tell me about that plane.
Well, I didn't recognize it as a plane at first. It looked to me like a charred piece of metal, and I had thought that there was an explosion from within the Trade Center.
From my perspective, I didn't know that it was an airplane that hit the building. I still thought it was a bomb, and everything I saw told me it was bombs in the building.
And there is the very interesting case of David Hanshoe. Mr. Hanshoe is a professional photographer for the New York Daily News. He took a famous photo of the South Tower right after United 175 supposedly flew right into this wall.
I was underneath it. I was looking at the tower. I had my camera in my hand. I heard the noise. I never saw the airplane. I was less than 100 yards away from the building. I was standing on West Street.
It doesn't matter what really happened, only matters what you believe.
He had this view. Each image in the flight path is separated by 1 second. David Hanshoe would have been able to see the plane for at least 6 seconds. He would have been able to hear it coming for considerably longer than that.
I had no idea what it was, and then the South Tower just exploded. It just blew up, and somebody said that was a plane.
It just blew up. A big explosion.
Bomb in another building, not second plane.
I had thought that there was an explosion from within the Trade Center.
News reporters at the scene also seem to have missed the plane.
The building's exploding right now!
I did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
News anchors watching monitors were quick to correct them.
We just saw another plane coming in from the side.
You did. That was out of
Yes, and that's the second explosion. You could see the plane come in just from the right-hand side of the screen.
Hollywood scriptwriters are taught how to create an emotional reaction in the audience by having a character in the story undergo some kind of transformation. Don Daler was at the World Trade Center, and he said,
I did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
But an hour later, he says,
the second building that we witnessed the airplane enter.
Don Daler made the transformation from
I did not see a plane go in.
to
We witnessed the airplane.
the audience identifies with the trusted reporter and is led to take the same leap of faith. It's easy to see how the television audience could be fooled. And a lot of eyewitnesses could be manufactured, scripted actors, shills.
I saw this plane come out of nowhere and just scream right into the side of the Twin Tower, exploding through the other side. And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
But what about other people, regular people, who were there and swear they saw a plane? There weren't many of those, but there are a few. If there was no plane crashing into that tower, could eyewitnesses really be made to believe they saw something that never happened? The answer is yes. Such is the power of fake video. A study by researchers at Warwick University, published in the Journal of Applied Cognitive Psychology, found that almost 50% of people shown fake footage of an event they witnessed firsthand were prepared to believe the video version rather than what they actually saw. Don Daler is cut off and he begins speaking again. There is time missing.
Right. Don Daler, ABC's Don Daler, who is on the scene. Don, just give me some description again of what you can see now.
What we're seeing, it appears that there is more and more fire and smoke. What we're seeing, it appears that there is more and more fire and smoke.
How does this happen on live TV? Live television, like talk radio, is fed through a delay of, say, 10 seconds. That's so that if anything unfit for the airwaves is heard or seen, the engineer has 10 seconds to switch out of delay, going totally live, and bypassing the offending material. Don Daler was speaking when they dumped out of delay and went totally live.
I did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
Why would they do that? It's obvious. We're supposed to believe that phone callers like Teresa Renault witnessed an airplane out of their window. If she was instead actually watching her television set, and the television feed was delayed as it normally would be, then Teresa's voice would be 10 seconds behind the video. Dumping out of delay on all networks solves this problem.
Said it appeared to bank sharply and...
This explains how the Chopper 5 mistakes were allowed to make it to the airwaves. They got us spinning our wheels and asking the wrong questions, like, was Bush warned that Al-Qaeda was planning to attack, and how specific were the warnings, instead of asking, what actually happened? Norman Mineta got us wondering whether Cheney's orders were to shoot the plane down or not shoot it down, instead of asking, what plane? What planes? They got truthers arguing about how they were somehow able to fake the passenger phone calls instead of asking, what phone calls? And they got us all worked up wondering why the steel was shipped off to China instead of asking, how did the steel get vaporized? They redefined words. They got you asking the wrong questions. They traumatized you, implanted thoughts and images into your reality, and made you thirst for the very things they wanted all along.
Whatever we have to do to eradicate the country or the world of this vermin, I just hope Bush will do whatever is necessary to get rid of it.
They controlled your mind.
Doesn't matter what really happened, only matters what you believe. Got some pretty magic for you, baby, nothing up my sleeve. Doesn't matter what you thought the truth was, reality is passé. Get your arms around a fairy tale and everything's okay. Okay. Dry your tears, have no fears. The whole universe is right between your ears, and every day's song is a vacation after your psychological operation. This won't even hurt a little. Everything's in your mind. Everyone's coming with us. Don't you get left behind. Going to the sweet nirvana. There's nothing to despair of. Just don't ask any stupid questions. Everything's taken care of for you. Say your goodbyes. Now you are wise. The whole universe is right behind your eyes, and every day